Christmas morning, 2 a.m. departure shock hit me harder than any physical blow ever could. My sister Ashley received a brand new $70,000 Lexus RX with an enormous red bow sitting in our driveway, while I unwrapped a $50 ceramic piggy bank with a note saying, "Start saving for your future." The family's laughter at my gift, versus their celebration of Ashley's car, created an unbearable moment that crushed my soul. I quietly packed my truck and drove away at 2 in the morning, blocking all family phone numbers, feeling completely abandoned and worthless. After 28 years of trying to earn their love and respect through endless sacrifice. The December cold bit through my jacket as I drove across town, my hands shaking on the steering wheel, not from the temperature, but from the complete devastation of what had just happened. 28 years old, and I still felt like that confused kid who never understood why nothing I did was ever good enough for my parents. I couldn't bear the thought of returning to my apartment. The silence there would just amplify the humiliation echoing in my head. Instead, I pulled into the Comfort Inn on Highway 51 and checked into a room for the night. The desk clerk, a tired-looking woman with graying hair, barely glanced up as she handed me the keycard. Sitting on the edge of the motel bed, I finally looked at my phone. 17 missed calls, all from family numbers I had just blocked, but one voicemail had come through before I activated the blocking feature. My finger hesitated over the play button. Part of me wanted to delete it without listening, but I needed to understand what kind of twisted logic my family would use to justify what had just happened. Dad's voice exploded through the speaker, furious and demanding. "Roger, you better return Ashley's Lexus immediately, or we will report it stolen to the police. This is completely unacceptable behavior even for you. That car was her Christmas present, and you have no right to take it just because you're throwing another one of your jealous tantrums." I stared at the phone, completely confused. Return Ashley's Lexus. I never took any car. I drove away in my own pickup truck, the same beaten-up Ford I had been driving for 6 years. The voicemail continued. "We know you're upset about your gift, but Ashley worked hard in college and deserves something nice. Your piggy bank was meant to teach you responsibility, something you obviously still need to learn. Bring the car back by morning, or there will be serious consequences." My confusion turned to anger. How could they accuse me of stealing something I never touched? I grabbed my truck keys from the nightstand and marched outside to double-check my vehicle. Sure enough, my rusty red Ford pickup sat in the parking space exactly where I left it. But when I opened the glove compartment to grab my registration, my hands started trembling for a different reason. The document I pulled out showed a 2024 Lexus RX, not my Ford pickup. My name was listed as the registered owner. This made absolutely no sense. I frantically searched through every piece of paperwork in my truck. Hidden beneath the owner's manual, I found a stack of financing documents, all bearing my name, all showing my signature on every single page. Monthly payment, $847 for 72 months. My phone rang. Ashley's number, which I had forgotten to block. "Roger, what the hell is wrong with you?" she screamed before I could say hello. "You stole my Christmas present and drove off like some kind of maniac. Mom is crying, Dad is furious, and you've ruined everything. Again." "Ashley, I didn't steal anything. I drove away in my own truck." "Liar. The Lexus is gone, and so are you. It doesn't take a genius to figure out what happened." "Wait, slow down. The Lexus is missing from the driveway. Obviously, you took it when you had your little meltdown and stormed off. Just because you got a piggy bank doesn't mean you can steal my car." Something clicked in my brain. "Ashley, whose name is the car registered under?" Silence on the other end. "Ashley, answer me. Who actually owns that Lexus legally?" "Well, technically, it's in your name. But Dad said that was just for insurance purposes. He said you agreed to help with the paperwork since you have better credit." My blood turned cold. I never agreed to anything. I've never even been to a car dealership with you or Dad. That's impossible. Dad showed me all the papers with your signature. I hung up and immediately called the dealership number printed on the financing documents. Even though it was Christmas morning, They had an emergency service line. Prestige Lexus Emergency Assistance, this is Jennifer. Hi, this is Roger Williams. I need to ask about a vehicle purchase that apparently happened in my name, but I never authorized any transaction. Let me pull up your account, Mr. Williams. I see here that you financed a 2024 Lexus RX on December 10th. Beautiful vehicle. Your father mentioned you were so excited to surprise your sister for Christmas. My father was there. Of course, sir. He handled most of the paperwork since you were deployed overseas. He had a power of attorney and all your identification documents. Very thoughtful of you to arrange such a generous gift while serving your country. Ma'am, I've never been in the military. I work at Morrison Insurance downtown. I've never been deployed anywhere. Jennifer's tone shifted immediately. Sir, I think you need to come in and speak with our sales manager first thing Monday morning. This sounds like a serious issue. I spent the rest of the night staring at the ceiling, trying to process what I had discovered. My family had used my identity to purchase a $70,000 car, forged my signature on financing documents, and then had the nerve to give it to Ashley as a Christmas gift, while expecting me to make the payments. When I reacted poorly to receiving a $50 piggy bank, they accused me of stealing the car that was legally mine, but bought without my knowledge. The cruelest part was realizing this had been planned for weeks. The piggy bank wasn't a thoughtless gift. It was a deliberate insult designed to highlight the contrast between Ashley's expensive present and my worthless token. They wanted me to feel small and unimportant while they celebrated their princess. As dawn broke through the motel window, I realized something that chilled me to the bone. If they were willing to commit identity theft for a car, what else had they done in my name? Monday morning arrived with gray skies and the kind of bitter cold that makes your bones ache. I called in sick to work and drove straight to Prestige Lexus, determined to get answers before this situation spiraled further out of control. The dealership looked exactly like every other luxury car lot in America, gleaming vehicles arranged like jewelry in a display case, floor-to-ceiling windows, and salespeople in expensive suits prowling for customers. I walked through the glass doors and asked for the sales manager. Jake Morrison turned out to be a tall man in his 50s, with perfectly styled silver hair and a firm handshake. His office was decorated with awards and photos of him shaking hands with satisfied customers, standing next to their new vehicles. Mr. Williams, I have to tell you, this is one of the strangest situations I've encountered in 23 years of car sales. Jake pulled out a thick file folder and spread the contents across his desk. Purchase agreements, financing applications, insurance forms, and a power of attorney document that allegedly gave my father legal authority to act on my behalf. Your father came in on December 8th, 2 weeks ago. He explained that you were deployed with the army in Germany, but wanted to surprise your sister for Christmas. He had all the necessary documentation. Jake swiveled his computer monitor so I could see the screen. Here's the security footage from that day. The video showed my father sitting across from Jake's desk, while Ashley bounced excitedly in a chair beside him. Dad was signing papers with confident strokes, occasionally pointing at different options on what appeared to be a vehicle configuration sheet. Ashley was clearly involved in choosing interior colors and features. He presented your driver's license, social security card, birth certificate, and this power of attorney. Jake handed me the document. The signature looked remarkably similar to my handwriting, but I had definitely never signed anything like this. Did you verify the power of attorney was legitimate? It was notarized by a licensed notary public. We called the number listed to confirm, and the notary verified the document was authentic. My stomach dropped. What number did you call? Jake showed me the notary information. The phone number listed was my father's cell phone. Your father was very convincing. He knew details about your employment. Your address even mentioned that you had been worried about your sister's safety, driving her old car through college. Everything seemed legitimate. Ashley had been driving a 12-year-old Honda Civic with over 200,000 miles. I actually had been concerned about her safety, but I never discussed buying her a new car with anyone. The monthly payment is $847 for 6 years. Your father assured us you could easily afford it with your military income and veteran benefits. Jake, I've never served in the military. I work at Morrison Insurance making $42,000 a year. There's no way I can afford an $800 car payment. Jake's face went pale. He immediately excused himself and returned with the dealership's general manager and their legal counsel. We spent 2 hours reviewing every document and piece of evidence. The conclusion was inescapable. My father had committed fraud to purchase the vehicle, and I was the victim of identity theft. But this was just the beginning of what I would discover. That afternoon, I drove to the credit union where I had banked for 8 years and requested a complete credit report. Sandra Martinez, the customer service representative, printed out 12 pages that made my blood pressure spike dangerously high. 3 years of financial fraud was laid out in black and white. A credit card from National Bank with $12,400 in debt that I never applied for. A personal loan from Community Finance for $15,000 that I knew nothing about. Store credit accounts at Furniture Palace and Best Electronics with combined debt of $6,800. Every single account listed my parents' address instead of mine. Every payment had been deliberately late, destroying my credit score and dropping it from excellent to poor over the past 36 months. Mr. Williams, when did you move back in with your parents? Sandra asked, confusion clear in her voice. I didn't. I've lived in my apartment on Oak Street for 4 years. Sandra's expression grew serious. These accounts show mail delivery to 1522 Maple Drive. That's been your address on file for all these transactions. My parents' address. They had been intercepting mail sent to their house using my name, which explained how I never received statements or notifications about these fraudulent accounts. Is there any way to determine when my mailing address was changed with these companies? Sandra made several phone calls while I waited. Each conversation revealed the same pattern. 3 years ago, someone calling from my parents' phone number had contacted every company I did business with, claiming I had moved back home to help care for aging relatives. They provided my social security number and answered security questions using information only family members would know. The person on the phone had been my mother. Mr. Williams, this appears to be a systematic case of identity theft involving multiple family members. You need to file police reports and contact an attorney immediately. As I drove home that evening, the full scope of the betrayal became clear. For 3 years, my parents had been using my identity to finance their lifestyle while deliberately damaging my credit to keep me dependent on them. They had painted me as irresponsible and financially naive while secretly stealing my financial future. The Lexus was just the latest and most brazen example of their criminal behavior. They had planned to give Ashley a $70,000 car using my credit, then rely on family pressure and emotional manipulation to force me to accept responsibility for the payments. The $50 piggy bank wasn't just an insult. It was part of the psychological manipulation. They wanted me to feel grateful for their generosity in allowing Ashley to drive my car, while I made the payments like a good little brother. But they had made one crucial mistake. They had documented everything, and their greed had finally pushed me to investigate. Now I had evidence of years of fraud, and I was going to use every bit of it to make them pay for what they had done. Tuesday morning, I walked into the law offices of Patterson and Associates with a cardboard box full of evidence and a burning desire for justice. The receptionist, a professional woman in her 30s, directed me to a conference room where I spread out bank statements, credit reports, and financing documents like a general planning a military campaign. Sarah Patterson entered the room 15 minutes later, and I immediately understood why she had such a strong reputation for handling complex fraud cases. She was probably in her early 40s, with sharp eyes that missed nothing, and an air of quiet competence that made me feel like I had finally found someone who could help me fight back. Mr. Williams, I've reviewed the preliminary information you provided over the phone. This is one of the most systematic cases of family financial abuse I've encountered in 15 years of practice. Sarah picked up the various documents and began organizing them into neat stacks. Her movements were precise and methodical, like a surgeon preparing for a complex operation. Let's start with the good news. Your parents have made several critical errors that actually strengthen your case considerably. First, they documented everything. The dealership has video evidence of the fraud. The forged signatures can be easily proven through handwriting analysis. And the postal fraud adds federal mail charges to the list of potential crimes. She opened a legal pad and began making notes as she spoke. I've done some preliminary research on your parents' financial situation. Your father retired early at 58, and your mother quit her job at the school district 6 months ago. Do you have any idea how they've been supporting themselves? I assumed they had savings from Dad's job at the phone company. He worked there for 32 years. I don't think so. I believe they've been living off credit taken in your name while Ashley attends private college. Let me ask you something. Do you know who's paying for Ashley's education at Riverside University? I assumed my parents were. Ashley mentioned getting scholarships. Sarah shook her head grimly. I pulled some records yesterday evening. Ashley's tuition is being paid through student loans. Loans that were taken out in your name using the same fraudulent address change system they used for the credit cards. The room started spinning. How much are we talking about? $43,000 in student loans over 3 years. Add that to the credit cards, the personal loan, the car financing, and various store accounts, and we're looking at total fraud exceeding $90,000. I slumped in my chair, overwhelmed by the scope of their betrayal. How is it possible that I never knew about any of this? The postal redirection is the key to their entire scheme. By changing your mailing address with creditors and loan companies, they ensured you would never receive statements, payment notices, or legal documents. They've been opening and disposing of mail intended for you for 3 years. Sarah stood up and walked to a whiteboard on the wall. She began drawing a timeline with dates and dollar amounts. But here's where their plan falls apart. 3 years ago, when you suspected something was wrong, you secretly installed a security app on your phone that automatically backs up all calls, texts, and voicemails to a cloud server. Is that correct? I nodded, feeling a spark of hope for the first time in days. Roger, those recordings are going to be crucial evidence. I need you to grant me access to that cloud account so we can review everything they've said over the past 3 years. The next 4 hours changed everything. Sarah and I listened to hundreds of recorded conversations while she took detailed notes and occasionally paused to make incredulous comments. We found conversations where my parents openly discussed using my excellent credit because I was too stupid to check up on them. Ashley's voice, laughing about her free education, funded by her pathetic brother who will never amount to anything anyway. Most damaging was a recording from 6 months ago, where my father was actually teaching Ashley how to forge my signature for future transactions. Listen to this one from October, Sarah said, queuing up a particularly revealing conversation. My mother's voice came through clearly. The Christmas plan is perfect. We give Ashley the Lexus with a big ceremony, and Roger gets something cheap and insulting. When he reacts badly, we can paint him as mentally unstable and jealous. Then we use that as justification to cut him out of the inheritance completely. My father's response was equally chilling. He's been suspicious lately. If we can provoke him into doing something dramatic, we can have him declared incompetent and take control of his finances officially. Ashley chimed in, I can't wait to see his face when he realizes I get a $70,000 car and he gets a piggy bank. He's going to have a complete meltdown. Sarah paused the recording and turned to face me. Roger, they set you up. The Christmas morning scenario was carefully planned psychological manipulation, designed to provoke exactly the reaction you had. They wanted you to discover the car fraud and react emotionally so they could paint you as unstable. Why would they want me to look unstable? Because unstable people can be declared legally incompetent. If they could convince a court that you were mentally unable to manage your own affairs, they could become your legal guardians and gain complete control over your finances. They've been planning to steal everything you'll ever earn for the rest of your life. The recordings revealed conversations going back 2 years where my parents discussed their long-term Roger strategy. They had been systematically damaging my credit while building a narrative of irresponsibility and mental instability. The goal was to eventually gain legal control over my income and assets. "There's more," Sarah said, pulling up financial records on her laptop. "Your parents are facing bankruptcy due to gambling debts your father accumulated at the Riverboat Casino. They owe $67,000 to various creditors and haven't made payments in 4 months." She turned the screen so I could see credit reports for both of my parents. The Lexus purchase was their attempt to transfer assets into Ashley's name before declaring bankruptcy. They plan to use your credit to avoid their own financial responsibility, then disappear and leave you holding the bag for everything. "How long have you known about the gambling?" "I discovered it yesterday. Your father has been a regular at the Lucky 7 casino for 18 months. He's lost over $40,000 playing blackjack and poker. Your mother has been writing bad checks to cover household expenses, while they spent your money paying gambling debts." Sarah leaned forward, her expression intense. "Roger, I need you to understand something. This isn't just financial fraud. This is a comprehensive plan to destroy your life and steal your future. They've been treating you like a financial resource to be exploited, not a family member to be loved. What do we do now? Now we fight back. And we're going to win because they've given us everything we need to put them in prison." Wednesday morning, I woke up feeling something I hadn't experienced in years: genuine hope. For the first time since Christmas, I had a plan and allies who understood the scope of what my family had done to me. Sarah Patterson was preparing legal documents that would expose their fraud and protect me from further abuse. That optimism lasted exactly 3 hours. I was sitting at my desk at Morrison Insurance, trying to catch up on work I had missed, while dealing with the family crisis when Brenda from reception called my extension. "Roger, there's a woman in the lobby who says she's your mother. She seems very upset and is asking to speak with you immediately." My stomach clenched. "Tell her I'm not available and ask her to leave. She's crying pretty loudly and making a scene. Mr. Morrison is starting to look concerned." I hurried to the reception area and found my mother standing in the center of the lobby, tears streaming down her face, speaking loudly enough for everyone to hear. "I just need to talk to my son about his mental health crisis. He had a psychotic break on Christmas morning and stole his sister's car. We're trying to get him the help he needs, but he won't return our calls." Every person in the lobby was staring. My co-workers were gathering near the reception desk, whispering among themselves. David Morrison, my boss, emerged from his office with a concerned expression. "Roger, is everything all right? Your mother seems very worried about you." Before I could respond, my mother launched into a theatrical performance that would have been impressive if it weren't so devastating. "David Roger has always been troubled, but lately, he's been having episodes. He thinks we're stealing from him, he imagines conspiracies, and on Christmas, he completely lost control. He stole his sister's brand new car and drove off in the middle of the night. We found the car abandoned at a motel, and Roger was hiding inside, acting paranoid and confused." She pulled out tissues and dabbed at her eyes dramatically. "We've been trying to get him psychiatric evaluation, but he refuses treatment. His father and I are beside ourselves with worry." David's expression shifted as he looked at me with new concern. "Roger, have you been under unusual stress lately?" "Mr. Morrison, my mother is not telling the truth. There's been a misunderstanding about a car purchase, but I haven't stolen anything or had any mental health crisis." My mother gasped audibly. "See, he can't even acknowledge his condition. This is exactly what the doctors warned us about. People having psychotic episodes often can't recognize their own symptoms." Security arrived at that point, 2 uniformed guards who gently but firmly escorted my mother toward the exit. But the damage was already done. She continued her performance all the way to the parking lot, calling back warnings about my dangerous mental state and begging David to please keep an eye on Roger before he hurts himself or someone else. After she left, David pulled me into his office for what he termed a wellness check conversation. I tried to explain the real situation, but I could see skepticism in his eyes. My mother's performance had been convincing, and now my boss was wondering if I was experiencing psychological problems. Roger, I want you to take the rest of the week off. Paid time off. Just to make sure you're feeling settled before you come back to work. It was phrased as concern, but it felt like suspension pending mental health evaluation. That evening, I discovered my family's campaign was just beginning. Ashley had launched a coordinated social media assault that made my stomach churn with humiliation and rage. Her Facebook page featured a lengthy post with childhood photos of us together, carefully selected to make me appear awkward and troubled, while she looked innocent and vulnerable. Many of you know my brother Roger has struggled with jealousy and anger issues since we were kids. He's always resented me and my accomplishments, but recently his behavior has become scary and unpredictable. On Christmas morning, he stole my graduation gift and disappeared for days, leaving our entire family worried sick about his safety. The post continued for 3 paragraphs, painting a picture of a disturbed older brother who had terrorized his sweet younger sister for years. She included photos from high school, where I looked particularly uncomfortable, and even a picture from my awkward teenage phase when I had bad acne and crooked teeth. I'm sharing this because Roger has been spreading lies about our family, claiming we stole from him and forged documents. These are clearly delusions caused by his mental illness, but some people might believe his stories if they don't know the full truth about his psychological problems. The post had been shared 47 times and received hundreds of comments, mostly from people I had known in high school, expressing shock and offering sympathy to Ashley. Several people shared their own stories about family members with mental health issues, treating my supposed condition as confirmed fact. Ashley had also posted Instagram stories featuring tearful videos of herself explaining how heartbroken she was that her brother had stolen her future and ruined Christmas for everyone. These videos were being shared across multiple platforms, creating a viral narrative of the innocent sister victimized by her mentally unstable brother. But the social media campaign was nothing compared to what my father did next. Thursday morning, I received a call from David Morrison that made my blood run cold. Roger, I just got off the phone with someone who identified himself as your father. He made some very serious allegations about your conduct here at the office. What kind of allegations? He claims you've been forging signatures on insurance documents and stealing office supplies to sell online. He also suggested you might have been accessing client accounts inappropriately. My hand started shaking. Mr. Morrison, none of that is true. My father is part of the situation I tried to explain yesterday. He seemed very credible, Roger. He provided specific examples and dates. He said he's been investigating your behavior for weeks and felt obligated to contact your employer before you caused financial damage to clients. Did he provide any actual evidence? He said he was mailing documentation to our office and that I should expect delivery by Friday. I knew with absolute certainty that my father was preparing to manufacture false evidence against me. He had 3 days to create convincing forgeries that would support his accusations. Mr. Morrison, I need you to know that my father is currently under investigation for identity theft and fraud. He's trying to discredit me before I can file formal charges against him. But I could hear the doubt in David's voice. Roger, that's a very serious accusation to make against your own father. The final blow came Thursday evening when my landlord, Patricia Chen, called with devastating news. Roger, I received a very disturbing phone call today from someone claiming to be your father. He told me you've been using illegal drugs in the apartment and that neighbors have been complaining about strange odors and late-night visitors. Patricia, I don't use drugs, and I've never had noise complaints. He also mentioned property damage and suggested I should inspect the apartment immediately. Roger, if there's drug activity happening on my property, I could lose my license and face criminal charges myself. There's no drug activity. This is part of a family dispute that has gotten out of control. I'm sorry, but I have to protect myself legally. I'm going to need you to submit to a random drug test and allow a complete apartment inspection by Monday, or I'll have to begin eviction proceedings. My father had systematically attacked every aspect of my life in 48 hours. He had damaged my reputation at work, threatened my employment, destroyed my credibility on social media, and put my housing at risk. The coordinated nature of the assault was clearly designed to overwhelm me and force me into submission. But they had made a critical strategic error by publicly claiming I was mentally unstable and dangerous while simultaneously claiming I had deliberately and cleverly stolen Ashley's car. They had created contradictory legal narratives that actually strengthened my case. Sarah Patterson explained it perfectly when I called her in panic that evening. Roger, mentally unstable people don't plan and execute sophisticated car theft schemes. If you're having psychotic episodes and paranoid delusions, you're not capable of the rational, methodical thinking required to steal a vehicle and hide it effectively. But what if people believe their version? Some people might initially, but we're not trying this case in the court of public opinion. We're going to federal court with documented evidence of systematic fraud. Your parents just made a huge mistake by putting their false accusations in writing and on social media. How is that a mistake? Because now we can prove they're lying. Every false statement they make publicly is evidence of their intent to cover up their crimes through intimidation and character assassination. Just as I was starting to feel slightly better about the legal situation, Sarah delivered news that changed everything. Roger, I got a call this evening from someone who identified himself as your Uncle Michael. He says he's your father's brother, and he has information that's crucial to your case. Uncle Michael, I haven't spoken to him in years. What kind of information? He says this exact same pattern happened to your older cousin 15 years ago, and he's been quietly collecting evidence of your parents' financial crimes for over a decade. He wants to meet with us tomorrow. Why would he wait 15 years to come forward? Because he's been waiting for the right opportunity to stop them, and your situation provides the perfect chance to expose everything at once. Friday morning, I met Sarah Patterson and my Uncle Michael at a diner called Rosie's Place on the outskirts of town. The restaurant was nearly empty with only a few truckers and early shift workers scattered across the worn vinyl booths. Michael looked older than I remembered, with gray hair and deep lines around his eyes, but his handshake was still firm and his gaze steady. Roger, I'm sorry it took me so long to reach out. I've been watching your parents destroy family members for years, but I needed the right moment to strike back effectively. Michael pulled a worn briefcase from the floor and placed it on the table between us. What I'm about to show you will change how you see our entire family history. He opened the briefcase and removed a thick manila folder stuffed with documents, photographs, and handwritten notes. 22 years ago, when your grandmother passed away, she left her house on Pine Street to both your father and me. The will was very clear about equal ownership, but your parents had other plans. Michael spread out copies of legal documents across the table. Within 3 months of the funeral, your father presented me with papers showing that Grandma had changed her will shortly before her death, leaving the entire property to him alone. I examined the documents. The signatures looked authentic, and everything appeared to be properly notarized. I suspected the will was forged, but I couldn't prove it. Your father and mother were very convincing, and I was grieving. I didn't want to fight with family over money when we had just lost our mother. Sarah leaned forward, studying the papers with professional interest. When did you realize the will was fraudulent? 2 years later, when I found the real will hidden in your father's basement during a family gathering. He had kept the original as some kind of trophy. The forged will was created using a completely different typewriter, and the notary signature belonged to someone who had been dead for 6 months when the document was allegedly signed. Michael pulled out a folder of photographs. I started documenting everything after that discovery. Every suspicious financial transaction, every family member who suddenly had money problems after spending time with your parents, every story that didn't quite add up. The photographs showed my parents at casinos, expensive restaurants, and vacation destinations that should have been far beyond their financial means. There were also pictures of family gatherings where Michael had secretly photographed documents left lying around my parents' house. Your cousin Brian was the first victim I could prove definitively. In 2008, your parents convinced him to let them help with his finances while he was deployed to Iraq. They used his power of attorney to take out a $22,000 boat loan in his name. Michael handed me a stack of bank statements and loan documents. When Brian returned from deployment, he discovered the debt and confronted your parents. They claimed he had authorized the purchase before leaving for Iraq and that he was suffering from combat-related memory problems. Did Brian believe them? Initially, yes. He was struggling with adjustment issues after his deployment, and your parents convinced him that he was confused and forgetful. It took him 3 years to realize he had been deliberately defrauded. Sarah was taking detailed notes as Michael continued his story. Over the years, I documented similar schemes targeting your Aunt Dorothy, your cousin Jennifer, and even Ashley's boyfriend when he stayed at your parents' house last summer. What happened with Ashley's boyfriend? Tyler made the mistake of leaving his wallet unattended during a family barbecue. Your mother photocopied his driver's license and credit cards. 3 weeks later, he discovered someone had opened a department store credit account in his name and charged $1,500 worth of electronics. Michael's evidence was overwhelming. He had been functioning as a one-man investigation unit for over a decade, carefully building a comprehensive case file while waiting for the right moment to expose everything. Why didn't you warn me about what they were doing? Michael's expression grew sad. I tried, Roger. Remember 3 years ago, when I suggested you should check your credit report regularly, and when I mentioned that you should never leave financial documents lying around your apartment? I did remember those conversations, but I had dismissed them as general advice, not specific warnings about my parents. I couldn't make direct accusations without solid proof, and I knew your parents would deny everything if I confronted them prematurely. But I've been building this case methodically, working with a private investigator to document their activities. Sarah looked up from her notes. Michael, this is an incredible collection of evidence, but why are you coming forward now? Because Roger's situation is different from the previous victims. This time, they've committed federal crimes with clear documentation, and Roger has recorded evidence of their planning. We finally have enough to put them in prison instead of just recovering money. Michael pulled out a final folder that made my heart race. There's something else you need to know, Roger. Something about your grandmother's real will. He handed me a document I had never seen before. It was a second will, dated 1 month before my grandmother's death, with official courthouse stamps and multiple witness signatures. Your grandmother didn't trust your father, even at the end. She created this second will, leaving her house to me, and establishing a trust fund for you. She left your father nothing because she suspected he had been stealing money from her checking account. I read through the document carefully. According to the second will, my grandmother had established a trust fund containing the proceeds from selling her house, plus investments and savings accounts totaling nearly $200,000. The trust was supposed to pay me quarterly distributions starting on my 25th birthday. Roger, you should have been receiving $5,000 every 3 months for the past 3 years. Your parents have been intercepting and stealing that money through the same postal redirection system they used for your credit cards. The room seemed to spin around me. $200,000, plus interest and investment growth. The trust is currently worth about $260,000. Your parents have been forging your signature on distribution checks and cashing them at their bank. Sarah was frantically writing notes and calculating numbers. This is grand theft in addition to identity theft and mail fraud. We're talking about federal charges that could result in decades in prison. Michael nodded grimly. I've been working with the private investigator to trace exactly how they've been accessing the trust fund. They created a false identity packet for you, complete with a fake driver's license using their address. They've been appearing at the bank in person to cash checks with your mother disguised to look like a male bank customer. He showed me surveillance photos from the trust bank, clearly showing my mother wearing masculine clothing and a baseball cap, presenting falsified identification to cash checks made out to me. The bank teller who processed most of these transactions retired last month and agreed to provide testimony about the suspicious nature of these visits. She said the person claiming to be you never looked quite right and always seemed nervous. How long have you known about this? I discovered the trust fraud 8 months ago, but I needed time to build an airtight case. I was planning to approach you after Christmas, but your parents accelerated their timeline with the Lexus scheme. Michael leaned back in his chair and studied my face carefully. Roger, I need you to understand something important. Your parents aren't just thieves. They're predators who have been systematically targeting vulnerable family members for decades. The psychological manipulation, the gaslighting, the character assassination campaign they're running against you now. This is their standard operating procedure. You mean they've done this to other people? Every single victim followed the same pattern. First, they identify someone with good credit and limited family support. Then they begin the grooming process, making the victim feel obligated and grateful for small favors. Next comes the financial exploitation, followed by gaslighting when the victim becomes suspicious. Finally, if the victim fights back, they launch a character assassination campaign to discredit them. Sarah closed her notepad and looked directly at me. Roger, with Michael's evidence combined with your recorded conversations and the documented fraud at the dealership, we have one of the strongest financial crime cases I've ever seen. What happens next? Michael smiled for the first time since our conversation began. Now, we stop running defense and go on the offensive. Your parents think they're winning because they've been controlling the narrative through intimidation and lies. But they have no idea what's about to hit them. Tomorrow morning, we're going to file federal charges, freeze their assets, and begin the process of recovering everything they've stolen. Not just from you, but from every family member they've victimized over the years. I felt a strange combination of relief, anger, and anticipation. For the first time in my life, I had allies who understood the true nature of my parents and were willing to help me fight back effectively. There's one more thing, Michael said, pulling out a business card. I've been in contact with the other family members they've defrauded. Everyone is willing to testify and provide evidence. Your parents aren't just facing charges from you. They're facing a comprehensive federal investigation involving multiple victims across 2 decades. As we left the diner, I realized that my parents' Christmas manipulation had been the catalyst for their ultimate downfall. By pushing me too far with the Lexus scheme, they had finally provoked the response that would expose their entire criminal enterprise. Saturday afternoon, I sat in Sarah Patterson's office putting the finishing touches on our legal strategy. Federal marshals were standing by with arrest warrants. The district attorney's office was coordinating with multiple agencies, and Uncle Michael had contacted every family member who had been victimized over the years. Everything was ready for Monday morning's coordinated strike against my parents' financial crime operation. But then my phone rang with a call that changed our timeline completely. Roger, this is your father. We need to settle this family disagreement before it gets out of hand. Meet us at the house tomorrow at 2 p.m. so we can discuss this situation like adults. His tone was condescending and confident, like he was talking to a confused child who needed patient guidance from wiser adults. There's nothing to discuss, Dad. You committed identity theft and fraud. Son, I know you're upset about the car situation, but you're blowing this way out of proportion. We were trying to help Ashley get established after college, and we thought you would be happy to contribute to your sister's success. The casual way he dismissed stealing $90,000 in my name as a car situation was exactly the kind of arrogant behavior that had enabled their crimes for years. We've invited the whole family over tomorrow so you can apologize for the embarrassment you've caused and return Ashley's vehicle. Aunt Dorothy and Uncle Robert are driving in from Springfield, and even Cousin Brian is coming. Everyone wants to see this resolved peacefully. I realized immediately what they were doing. They planned to create a public forum where family pressure and emotional manipulation would force me to back down from pursuing legal action. With multiple relatives present, they expected me to cave in, rather than air dirty laundry in front of the extended family. I also called the police department to let them know we were having a family meeting to return stolen property. Officer Martinez will be there, to make sure everything goes smoothly and there are no misunderstandings. They had orchestrated the perfect setup. Family members who didn't know the full story, police presence to legitimize their version of events, and social pressure to make me appear unreasonable if I refuse to forgive and forget. You have until 2 o'clock tomorrow to bring the Lexus back and apologize to your sister. After that, we're filing theft charges and cutting you out of this family permanently. After he hung up, I immediately called Sarah and Michael to explain the situation. "This is actually perfect," Sarah said after hearing the details. "They're setting up their own downfall by creating a public forum with police presence and multiple witnesses. How is that good for us? Because we're going to turn their ambush into our courtroom. Instead of defending yourself against their accusations, you're going to present evidence of their crimes to everyone present, including the police officer." Michael was equally enthusiastic when he joined the conference call. "Roger, this is exactly the kind of arrogant overreach that's going to destroy them. They're so confident in their ability to manipulate the situation that they're walking directly into our trap. What if the family believes their version of events?" "They won't," Michael assured me. "I've been talking to Dorothy, Robert, and Brian over the past week. Everyone knows about the trust fund theft now, and Brian has been sharing his own evidence of financial fraud. Your parents think they're gathering allies, but they're actually assembling a group of victims who are ready to testify against them." Sarah outlined our strategy for the confrontation. "We're going to let them present their version of events first. They'll accuse you of stealing Ashley's car and having a mental breakdown. Then, we'll systematically destroy their credibility by presenting documented evidence of their crimes. Won't that tip our hand legally? Not at all. By Monday morning, they'll be under arrest anyway. This meeting gives us a chance to recover additional evidence and potentially get recorded confessions if they try to explain away the obvious fraud." Sunday afternoon arrived with unseasonably warm weather for December. I parked my truck 2 blocks away from my parents' house and walked through the neighborhood where I had grown up carrying a briefcase full of evidence that would change my family forever. The driveway was crowded with cars, and I could see people gathered in the living room through the front windows. My parents had definitely assembled a substantial audience for what they expected to be my public humiliation and surrender. I rang the doorbell and waited. Ashley answered the door with a triumphant smile, clearly expecting me to arrive defeated and ready to beg forgiveness. "Roger, I'm so glad you finally came to your senses. Everyone's here to support you through this difficult time." The living room was packed exactly as my father had promised. Aunt Dorothy and Uncle Robert sat on the couch. Cousin Brian was in the corner chair, and my parents were positioned prominently near the fireplace, like judges presiding over a court hearing. Officer Martinez, a young Hispanic policeman, stood near the front window in full uniform. "Roger, thank you for coming," my father began in his most authoritative voice. "We're all here because we love you and want to help you work through this episode." The word episode was carefully chosen to reinforce the mental health narrative they had been promoting. "Your mother and I understand that you're upset about not receiving an expensive Christmas gift, but stealing Ashley's car was completely unacceptable behavior. We need you to acknowledge what you did wrong, apologize to your sister, and return her property." Ashley stepped forward with her phone already recording. "Roger, I know you've been struggling lately, but taking my graduation present really hurt me. All I want is my car back, so we can move forward as a family." The performance was flawless. They had created a scenario where I appeared to be the obviously guilty party surrounded by concerned relatives, trying to help me do the right thing. Officer Martinez was watching me carefully, clearly prepared to arrest me if I refused to cooperate. Before I respond to those accusations, I'd like everyone to see some documents that might provide additional context for this situation. I opened my briefcase and pulled out the handwriting analysis that proved the forged signatures on the car financing paperwork. This is a professional handwriting analysis comparing my actual signature to the signatures on the Lexus purchase agreement. The analysis conclusively proves that someone else forged my name on every document. Officer Martinez stepped forward to examine the report. His expression shifted as he read the technical details and expert conclusions. The dealership also provided security camera footage showing exactly who purchased the vehicle in my name. I handed him printed screenshots from the surveillance video, clearly showing my father signing papers, while Ashley selected vehicle options. Dad, you told the dealership that I was deployed overseas with the Army, and that you had power of attorney to act on my behalf. But I've never served in the military, and I never signed any power of attorney. My father's confident expression flickered for the first time. Roger, you're misunderstanding the paperwork. I was helping coordinate the financing as a cosigner. Then why did you present my driver's license, social security card, and birth certificate as identification for yourself? Aunt Dorothy looked confused. What's he talking about, Bill? Officer Martinez was now studying the documents with intense interest, and I could see him starting to piece together the real story. There's more evidence that everyone should see. I pulled out the credit reports showing 3 years of fraudulent accounts opened in my name. For 3 years, my parents have been using my identity to obtain credit cards, personal loans, and even student loans for Ashley's college education. The total fraud exceeds $90,000. Uncle Robert grabbed the credit reports and began reading them carefully. Bill, these accounts are all listed with your address. How is that possible if Roger lives across town? That's because they illegally redirected my mail to their house without my knowledge or consent. Postal fraud is a federal crime. My mother finally spoke, her voice shaking. Roger, you're obviously having some kind of breakdown. These conspiracy theories aren't rational. Then perhaps you can explain this. I pulled out the bank surveillance photos, showing my mother, disguised as a male customer, cashing trust fund checks made out to me. This is my mother at First National Bank, cashing quarterly trust fund distributions that legally belong to me. She's wearing men's clothing and using falsified identification to impersonate me. Officer Martinez took the photos and studied them carefully. Even with the masculine disguise, my mother was clearly recognizable. Ma'am, is this you in these photographs? My mother's face went completely white. She looked around the room, desperately seeking support from relatives who were now staring at her with shock and confusion. Brian stood up from his chair and addressed the entire room. I need everyone to know that Bill and Linda did the exact same thing to me 8 years ago. They stole $22,000 by taking out a boat loan in my name while I was deployed to Iraq. Dorothy gasped audibly. The boat loan, you told us Brian authorized that purchase. I never authorized anything. They forged my signature, just like they forged Roger's. Michael chose that moment to make his entrance, walking through the front door with his own briefcase full of evidence. I'm sorry to interrupt this family meeting, but I have some additional information that might be relevant. He immediately handed Officer Martinez the documentation of the forged will and stolen inheritance. Officer Bill and Linda Williams have been operating a systematic identity theft scheme targeting multiple family members for over 20 years. The evidence includes forged legal documents, falsified identification mail fraud, and grand theft totaling several $100,000. The room erupted in shocked conversations as family members started putting pieces together and realizing they had all witnessed or experienced suspicious financial activities involving my parents. Officer Martinez called for backup and began taking detailed statements from everyone present. Instead of arresting me for car theft, he was building a comprehensive federal case against my parents for organized financial crimes. Ashley broke down crying when she realized that her college education, her car, and her comfortable lifestyle had all been financed through criminal activity. I didn't know, she kept repeating. I thought Dad was just helping me get started. My parents were placed under arrest that evening with formal charges pending federal review. The house they claimed to own was actually mortgaged beyond its value using fraudulent loan applications, and most of their assets were immediately frozen pending investigation. Officer Martinez later told me that in 15 years of police work, he had never seen such a comprehensive financial fraud scheme operating within a single family. The evidence was so overwhelming that my parents' attorney advised them to accept plea bargaining rather than risk trial. That night, I sat in my apartment thinking about how different my life could have been if I had discovered their crimes years earlier. But I also realized that everything had worked out exactly as it needed to. Their greed and arrogance had finally pushed them too far, and their own family meeting had provided the perfect venue for their complete exposure and downfall. 6 months later, I stood in federal court watching my parents receive their sentences. Dad was given 4 years for identity theft, mail fraud, and organized financial crimes. Mom received 3 years for conspiracy and document forgery. They would serve their time in separate federal facilities, and upon release, they were required to pay full restitution to every victim they had defrauded over the years. Ashley was in the courtroom that day, sitting beside me, rather than with our parents. She had spent the past 6 months in therapy, trying to understand how she had been manipulated into participating in criminal activities. The prosecutor decided not to file charges against her in exchange for her cooperation in building the case against our parents. "I keep thinking about all the things I should have questioned," she told me quietly, as we waited for the judge to return with the sentences. "The expensive gifts, the college tuition payments, the way Mom and Dad always seemed to have money for everything I wanted, but nothing for you." Ashley had discovered that our parents had been grooming her since childhood to feel entitled to financial benefits, while viewing me as a resource to be exploited. The psychological manipulation had been as damaging to her as the financial fraud had been to me. "They trained me to see you as inferior and worthless," she continued. "Every time you achieved something, they found ways to minimize it. When you got promoted at work, they said it was because your boss felt sorry for you. When you bought your truck, they said you had wasted money on junk. I believed everything they told me about you." The most difficult part of her awakening was realizing how actively she had participated in my emotional abuse. The social media posts, the cruel comments about my appearance and intelligence, the casual dismissal of my feelings and accomplishments. She had been weaponized against me since we were children. "Ashley, you were a victim too," I reminded her. "They manipulated both of us, just in different ways." The federal investigation had uncovered evidence that our parents had been planning to eventually defraud Ashley as well. Once she graduated from college and began earning her own income, they intended to repeat the same identity theft pattern they had used on me. She was never their favored child. She was just a different kind of victim whose usefulness hadn't expired yet. Uncle Michael had become the unofficial leader of our newly reformed family structure. He helped Ashley find legitimate employment and assisted her in developing healthy financial habits. He also connected me with other family fraud victims from around the country, creating a support network for people who had experienced similar betrayals. The trust fund that my grandmother had established was finally distributed properly. After legal fees and accumulated interest, I received $280,000 that immediately transformed my financial situation. More importantly, the money came with a letter my grandmother had written specifically for me before her death. "Roger." The letter began, "If you are reading this, it means your father attempted to steal your inheritance and was eventually caught. I am not surprised. I have been watching him manipulate and exploit family members for years, and I knew he would eventually target you directly." My grandmother's letter continued for 3 pages, documenting her suspicions about my father's character and her specific instructions for how the trust fund should be used to help me build an independent life free from family financial abuse. "Use this money to create the foundation for your own family someday. Choose people who value your heart more than your bank account, and remember that the most important inheritance I can give you is the knowledge that you deserve to be treated with love and respect." I had never realized how clearly my grandmother understood the family dynamics that would eventually destroy my parents' criminal enterprise. Her trust fund wasn't just financial support. It was a deliberate tool for exposing and stopping their fraud. With my financial situation stabilized and my legal troubles resolved, I was able to focus on rebuilding my professional reputation. David Morrison. My boss publicly apologized for doubting my character when the federal investigation proved that my parents' accusations had been completely fabricated. The company even promoted me to senior account manager with a substantial raise. Roger, I learned an important lesson about believing accusations without investigating the source. David told me during my promotion ceremony. Your integrity during this crisis was impressive, and I want to make sure you know how much we value your character and professionalism. The most meaningful part of my recovery was the volunteer work I began doing with Sarah Patterson's law firm. We created a program to help other victims of family financial abuse navigate the legal system and recover stolen assets. Over the past year, we have assisted 47 families and recovered over $2 million in fraudulently obtained money. Many of the victims we helped had experienced the same psychological manipulation and gaslighting that nearly destroyed my self-confidence. Helping them recognize their worth and fight for justice became one of the most fulfilling experiences of my life. The hardest part is usually convincing victims that they deserve better treatment, Sarah explained during one of our training sessions. Family financial abuse is particularly devastating because it comes from people who are supposed to love and protect you unconditionally. Ashley and I have slowly rebuilt our relationship, though it required tremendous effort and patience from both of us. She had to learn how to see me as a complete person, rather than the inferior being our parents had trained her to perceive. I had to forgive years of cruel treatment, while acknowledging that she had been manipulated just as much as I had been exploited. I never understood why you always seemed so sad and angry, she told me during one of our therapy sessions together. Now I realize you were reacting normally to abnormal treatment. Mom and Dad convinced me that your unhappiness was proof that something was wrong with you, instead of evidence that something was wrong with how they treated you. Our relationship will never be the same as it might have been if our parents had been honest, loving people. But we have built something new based on mutual respect and genuine affection, rather than manipulation and exploitation. The Lexus became a symbol of transformation rather than fraud. After the legal proceedings concluded, and the vehicle was officially transferred to my name, I decided to donate its full value to a non-profit organization that helps young adults aging out of foster care. Many of these people face financial challenges similar to family fraud victims, and they often lack the support systems necessary to recognize and prevent financial exploitation. This car was purchased through criminal activity, but now it's going to help people who need legitimate support. I explained to the charity director when I presented the donation check. Sometimes the best way to overcome a bad experience is to use what you learned to help other people facing similar challenges. I purchased a reliable used car with part of my trust fund money and invested the rest in my education and professional development. The independence that comes from financial security allowed me to make decisions based on my own values, rather than fear of family retaliation or withdrawal of support. The most important lesson I learned through this entire experience is that toxic family relationships require the same boundaries and consequences as any other harmful relationship. Blood connection does not justify accepting abuse, financial exploitation, or systematic disrespect. Sometimes protecting yourself means walking away from people who refuse to treat you with basic human dignity. True family relationships are built on mutual love, honest communication, and genuine concern for each other's well-being. They cannot exist in environments where some people are valued more than others, where manipulation replaces honest conversation, or where love is conditional upon accepting mistreatment. I also learned that speaking up about family financial abuse can protect not only yourself, but other potential victims who may be suffering silently. My decision to fight back legally prevented my parents from continuing their criminal activities and potentially helped other families avoid similar exploitation. The support I received from Uncle Michael, Sarah Patterson, and even eventually Ashley taught me that healthy relationships are possible, and that I deserve to be surrounded by people who genuinely care about my happiness and success. Building those relationships required learning to trust my own instincts and set appropriate boundaries with people who had trained me to accept unacceptable treatment. Today I wake up each morning in my own apartment, drive my own car, and go to a job where my character and abilities are respected and valued. I have healthy relationships with people who treat me as an equal, and I have the financial security to make choices based on my own goals rather than fear of family rejection. Most importantly, I have learned to recognize my own worth independent of other people's opinions or treatment. The boy who accepted a $50 piggy bank while his sister received a $70,000 car has grown into a man who understands that his value as a person is not determined by the gifts he receives or the way others choose to treat him. The Christmas morning that nearly destroyed my self-esteem ultimately became the catalyst for the most important period of growth and healing in my life. Sometimes the worst thing that happens to you becomes the foundation for the best thing that could happen to you. If you have experienced financial abuse or manipulation from family members, I want you to know that you are not alone and that legal help is available. You deserve to be treated with respect and honesty, regardless of your family relationships. Speaking up about abuse is not betrayal. It is self-preservation and protection of other potential victims. Have you ever experienced a situation where family members treated you unfairly, and you had to decide whether to accept it or fight back? How did you find the courage to stand up for yourself when the people who were supposed to support you became the source of your problems? I would love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. Thank you for letting me share my story with you. I hope it helps anyone who might be facing similar challenges to recognize their own worth and seek the support they deserve. Please like this video if it resonated with you, subscribe for more stories about overcoming family challenges, and share this with anyone who might benefit from hearing about the importance of setting healthy boundaries with toxic family members. Remember that you have the power to create the life and relationships you deserve, even when it means walking away from people who refuse to treat you with basic respect and dignity.